Recording, so we'll get this show started if everybody's ready. Need a minute, get settled? I know you're rushing, but thank you for being here.
Sorry, I was a little late.
No, you were late. You were perfectly on time, actually, perfectly on time. Okay, let's get started. This is the Suamico Village Board meeting for Monday, June 16th, 2025. The time is 6 p.m. At this time, I would like to call this meeting to order. The actual time of start looks like it's 6:02 or 6:03 for that matter. So at this time, I'd like to call this meeting to order, and just a reminder, anybody who is here to speak, please speak into the microphone, provide your name and address for the public record if you would. Thank you. Do I have a motion for approval of the evening's agenda? I do have a motion from trustee Stevens to approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And I have a second from trustee Romas. Excellent, thank you. We have a motion to approve the evening's agenda, and that motion has been seconded as well. Any other further questions or discussion on the agenda before you this evening? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, motion carries 7-0. Thank you. At this time, let's stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Item number 5 this evening. Item number 5 is public appearances. That is for anyone here who wishes to come forward and share with us thoughts, ideas, anything that's on your mind on an item not on the agenda. If you are here for an item on the agenda, we will make every effort to give you the opportunity to speak on that item if possible. Is there anyone here for an item not on the agenda? All right, we have no one here for an item not on the agenda. That's excellent. We're all in the right place then. So number 6 this evening in our presentations. The first is 6A, a presentation by Administrator Kaker honoring Chief Bertler for 5 years of service. Administrator Kaker, if you would.
I don't know about a presentation, but I'll say some words. So I would like to recognize Chief Bertler for his 5 years of service as a fire chief in the village of Suamico. But to be fair, he did start with the village back in 2008, right? 2008. So 17 years of service and 5 as fire chief. He came in at a very difficult time, came in early 2020, and being a leader in an organization, a fresh fire chief back in March of 2020, he handled that very well. Also has been a part of a growing department. We've added multiple full-time employees within the fire department back in 2020, and then brought in several new services, new policies, new procedures. We've taken over an EMR service, yeah, and then was part of the construction of the new fire station. So he's been a part of a lot of really big projects and a transformation of our fire department just in the last 5 years. So congratulations, and thank you for your service to the village, and we hope for many more years.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I appreciate it. It makes your job easy when you have a nice supporting cast here and at the fire department, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
service. Congratulations, you get to put it with all the other ones.
Thank you.
All right. Item 6B, a 10-year service award for Chad Jokey from Director Smits, if you
All right.
would.
Thank you. Chad is not here tonight, but he's here with us in spirit, so I'll let him know that tomorrow. Chad has been here for 10 years. He was hired shortly after I was, actually, and he's been a good employee every year that he's been here. He's kind of the leader of our carpentry division. He's built a lot of the improvements that we have out at our Parks Department. He did the fences back here for the Historical Society. Good guy, good worker, and he's always eager for a new challenge.
Excellent, 10 years, too.
Nice.
How many of those years working with you?
All 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
That either says a lot about him or says something about
Something.
you. Either way. All right, terrific, thank you. All right, item 6C, 2024 audit from CLA. Director Deminy.
All right, so we completed the 2024 financial audit. They were here in March. Everything got wrapped up in May. So you guys got hard copies of the audit, and Amber Drisky from Clifton Larson Allen, the audit firm, is here to present the results and answer any questions.
I don't know, hopefully you can hear me okay. But as Katie mentioned, my name is Amber. I think most of you are familiar faces, but maybe some not. I'm a principal with our SLG group out of Green Bay. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. I'm going to primarily focus on the summary financial information, but I just want to mention a couple things that were in your bound document that you should have received. In the independent auditor's report, just a summary, we did issue a clean, unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That's the highest opinion we can provide from an audit standpoint, obviously. There is an emphasis of matter paragraph in that report, and it sounds a little scarier than what it actually is. It really means that there was a new standard that became applicable for the village. And why I want to bring attention to that is because if you actually flip all the way through the statements, at the back of the statements, in your nighttime reading, there's one column that looks blank, and it's intentionally there because there was a new standard, GASB 100, that became applicable, that your TID 4 was a non-major fund, now a major fund. So that relates to, that's what the emphasis of matter relates to, and why that's there. The other thing with the emphasis of matter and the GASB standards is we also did evaluate GASB 101 related to compensated absences and how it impacts the village, as that was applicable for 2024. And that was not a material change to your financial statements or really a change to what was already being recorded. Then, as always, as part of the audit, we review the internal controls. We don't issue an opinion on those controls, but we would be required to disclose any non-compliance or any findings. We did not have any compliance issues, but we just have the one finding that we prepared the financial statements. We prepare probably 95% of our clients' financial statements for convenience, so that's just disclosed within here. That relates primarily to the complexity of the disclosures, the numbers and all of those things. The village has always been very, very good about. It's just the disclosures continue to evolve year over year. So that is the summary from here, but I'm going to go through the summary financial information, the stapled document that should have been, have the numbers on there for you. So the governmental fund balances, if we start there, the general fund had a total fund balance of about 2.8 million. The unassigned portion, 1.7 million. Your policy is 25%, and which comes out to about 1.5, so you're over your policy there. You're at currently about 28% for the unassigned, and that's usually what we use from a financial health perspective. We like to see, for a long time, it was anywhere from, I'm going to say 10 to 20%, depending upon your cash flow and so forth, what your capital needs were. With inflation and things that happened since 2020, it's kind of been an industry, a new industry benchmark to kind of go a little bit higher than that, just from a pure inflation and cost standpoint. So that 20, we've been recommending more in the 25 to 35, depending upon what you have set aside. You have a very healthy capital improvement fund that allows you some flexibility, so your general fund doesn't have to be as high. So that 28% is a healthy fund balance range for the village. Some special revenue funds at December 31st, 2024, just that I want to highlight. The park development fees, about $105,000. The excess stadium district tax has $100,000 remaining, and the wetland bank about $364,000. Capital projects, capital improvements, that's the fund balance I was just referring to, is about 2.8 million, and that is all broke out or earmarked, and there is a breakdown of that within this document on page 3. Most of that is equipment replacement of about 1.6 million, and then future capital improvements of about 670,000. TID number 1 has fund balance of about 604,000. TID 2, 625, and TID 4 a deficit yet of about 585. That's still very new, and that will continue to evolve and change over time. The cemetery fund about 117,000. If we go to the next page here, I kind of highlighted already your fund balance. There's a graph on page 2 here that'll show you your general fund balance over time. And I kind of highlighted what that unassigned fund balance looks like with the 28% approximately. So I'm going to skip over that. I already mentioned, I'm going to skip to page 3, and I'm going to go to page 4. Page 4 has the net unreimbursed project costs that remain for TID 1, 2, and 4. TID 1 has unreimbursed project costs of about $960,000. TID 2 has reimbursed project costs of $293,000, and TID 4 about $585,000. TID 2, I believe the discussion is closing, and we're going to work on that with a TID audit, so we'll continue to meet the requirements as it relates to TID 2 there. If we go to page 5, garbage and recycling, that GASB 100 that I mentioned also, the garbage and recycling became a major fund in 2024. It was a non-major with stormwater in the past, so that was a change. And the change in net position for garbage was about $110,000. That number's kind of, there's no depreciation in there, so that one more correlates a little bit closer with your cash balance. I always like to look at what the cash balance is in enterprise funds, because you have depreciation, you might have some WRS type items in there that are non-cash. So the change in cash for the garbage and recycling was a surplus of about $115,000. So the net position change in the cash very much correlate there. Page 6, the water utility. The change in net position here on the water is $531,000 as opposed to $458,000 from the prior year. But what that equated to in terms of cash was a surplus of about $259,000. And that's because if you see at the top, you got depreciation of about $280,000, and then you do have some WRS that is allocated to the water and sewer utility. So the cash point of $259,000, again, I always like to look at that, make sure that you're generating enough cash from your operations to cover your debt and your capital assets. And that's something that the village has really been very low on the debt side. Obviously, there's some projects coming up that'll change that, and your rates will be reflected on the water side for that. The rate of return, there is an error on this bottom of this page, a little typo. Your rate of return for the water was 9.47 in 2024, as opposed to 9.2. So very consistent with that. And I can get a printed change copy of that to Katie. I'm not sure where that number came from.
Can only dream.
Very different. The sewer utility for 2024 on page 7, the change in net position here was about $359,000 as opposed to $1.3 million, but there's timing differences from year to year. The one thing that I would look at, and most of that is capital contributions, but again, the cash piece that we look at, the cash surplus was about $458,000 in 2024. Some of that's capital timing and the timing of those contributions, and when AP comes in or goes out, there's a lot on that cash flow side. So again, on the sewer side, you're not regulated by the state. Continue to evaluate your rates, make sure that they're enough to cover your operations, but more importantly, your capital maintenance and any debt that you have. The one piece of recommendation on the sewer side is we've seen a lot of clients who they maybe don't increase rates more frequent enough, and then they end up with significant increases at some point. So just continue to evaluate what your capital plans are over the next 3, 5, 7 years, so you can kind of forecast that a little bit. Any questions on that financial piece?
Nope.
Otherwise, there should be one single page paper that you should have received in your documents, and that is our independent accountant's report as it relates to your ARPA funding. So the ARPA funding was over the $750,000 threshold that would require a federal single audit, but the federal government allowed an alternative procedure. So we did an examination that you were able to prepare and provide this report. So we did test the ARPA funds, and we did not have any issues in accordance with those compliance requirements.
Good.
Any questions?
Okay. Thank you. Questions? Any questions?
Hearing none, otherwise thank you for your help, because I know that when we're in here for that period of time and after, we can kind of be pains and bug for a while. So we appreciate it. and
Did you
then
just nod when she said they can be pains?
I was one of them,
Oh, okay, all right, I understand.
So if there's ever any questions, though, Katie does have my contact information. Feel free
As
to
always,
reach out.
appreciate the thorough nature of the report and the detail that you presented with it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amber.
All right. Let's go, move on. This evening, item number 7 is the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of previous minutes of the village board meeting, item A, item B, April 2025 animal control report, item C, May 2025 municipal court report, item D, May 2025 fire report, item E, May 2025 rec report, item F, May 2025 Treasurer's Report, and item G, temporary Class B beer licenses, Howard Suamico Youth Sports Association for July 18 through 20, 2025 at Calavera Springs Park and Idlewild Park. Before requesting a motion, I was made aware from trustee Neto that he did have a concern with regard of the consent agenda, so before asking for a motion, I'll turn it over to trustee Neto.
So it'd be item 9B.
On the minutes.
Item 9B on the previous, under the previous minutes of the village board meeting dated June 2nd, 2025.
Where it
Correct.
says enclosed, changing it to open air. I was in contact with the Division of Alcohol, and they informed me that the village board cannot override a liquor license. And we had it as enclosed after speaking with my wife. Now, the reason that we put the enclosed in there was the fencing, where you put the rope up, so that was the enclosed area. Now, open air, does that mean no fencing?
So you still have to have containment to show where people can or cannot go with the alcohol? So you would still have to have containment, whether that was in your license or not in your verbiage?
Is this more a matter of wording here, though? Did we change something and it was wording that probably shouldn't have
So-
been changed?
So that is our interpretation of the enclosure for the containment for liquor.
And I'll
by-
step in too.
Go ahead.
So I also reached out to the state, talked to Zach Dolan. He's the Director of Legal Services. He didn't give me a definitive answer. He said, contact your village attorney for more guidance, which of course isn't very helpful. But I reached out to our attorney, and our attorney advised that as long as the village board approved the license and approved the area, like you didn't shrink the area, the village board can carry on. There is no issue with what the board did. That was her guidance. So had the board denied the license or they changed the premised area, that would be an issue. But really, we're talking about semantics at this point. So she didn't tell us that there was a need for a change.
Are there other questions? Or
So are we all good here, or what?
I think from the standpoint, so the license was granted. The village board did, per the notes, and you're right, trustee Eckert, because we discussed it that night. Enclosure within this context, according to zoning administrator Dunks, was referring to enclosure of any type, rope enclosure, any type of enclosure, bicycle fencing, whatever it might be. When I brought up the idea of enclosure, and I had hoped that trustee Neto would have been there, because we would have had this discussion, maybe we could have avoided this. But to me, I took enclosure to mean just very straightforward, talking about walls, And that was my concern, because he has an open-air facility, next to his establishment. From my understanding of what this is, we're talking about, the license has been approved, there's been no change to the area. So in order for this really to change, do we have to understand who has suffered harm from the action of the village board? Who has suffered the harm? Has there been a harm due to the village board changing the verbiage from open air to enclosed? Am I?
Yeah, yep.
So trustee Neto, and this is, you can ask for a motion as we discussed, and you certainly should if you feel that you need that or you would like that. But in this case, you have the license, and if we were to ask for a motion to review this again, and the village board would approve that legal review, then that license, would the license need to be withdrawn pending the review?
No, I wouldn't say so, but it's been reviewed. I mean, I don't see any value in going back to the attorney. The attorney has given, their take on it. I'm not sure what else the village board would do with that.
Well,
Nobody suffered. It just came down when I talked to the Department of Alcohol, that the village board cannot change
And I'm just-
verbiage on a license. I don't want to approve something tonight with the consent agenda
Sure.
if it's not right.
So I'm a little confused. So there is no Department of Alcohol.
Right here
There's the Department of Revenue, and there's an alcohol division. Is that,
is Travis Burkhagen, Special Agent, Bureau of Enforcement, Division of Alcohol Beverages.
is that under the Department of Revenue? Which I just want to make sure we're
Yes.
talking to the same people.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep,
all right.
they did come in. And
Clear.
then Kurt,
Got it.
who's gonna retire in September,
Okay,
is the one that called me and said, you can't.
all right.
I just don't wanna, like I said, I don't wanna approve something that could put us in a bind.
And technically, when you're approving minutes, you aren't saying that what we did was just. You're approving what happened. So it's not like the village board, let's say the village board did something totally improper. You would still approve the minutes because that's what happened. But you would take a separate action if you thought that the village board took some inaction or improper action.
Both-
So approving the minutes doesn't put you in any kind of jeopardy.
Both are entirely up to you. You have the option, just as everybody does, to approve or not approve the minutes. And you also, certainly have the option, if you have a motion that you'd like to bring to the board, for the board to decide on, with regard to this. It's entirely up to you.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, so trustee, is there anyone else with comments on the consent agenda? Otherwise, we have a motion on the floor from trustee Neto to approve the evening's agenda. No? Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from trustee Romas. Any other last-minute questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, thank you. I think that was, I appreciate you bringing that forward, because I think that was an important clarification, and especially for myself, being the responsible party who brought up that idea of enclosed, I'm thankful to have that clarification made and brought forward. All right. We are off to item number 7 this evening. Item number 7 is no, wait, what am I? Am I on the wrong page again?
We're on 8, I think.
8A, final.
Yes, I am on the wrong page. I am on item 8, planning and zoning items. Final plat of Golden Acres, zoning administrator Dunks.
Thank you. We're looking at just over a 10-acre parcel here.
Losing it.
This did go for preliminary approval back in February. The final plat is showing the same 8 buildable lots with the 1 outlot. Pretty much consistent with that preliminary plat. The stormwater plan has been completed. Public Works and Utility Commission did recommend using the plan with the urban cross-section, so this will be a curb and guttered development rather than open ditches. The plan is currently being reviewed by village staff and our consultant. All lots do appear to meet the rural residential zoning requirements. Sewer and water services are not available, and there are no plans to expand any of those utilities to this or any of the surrounding areas. Lots 3, 4, and 5 do show increased building setbacks. That's to meet the lot width requirements on a curved road. They're measured at building setback rather than at road right-of-way. The developer's agreement would need to be completed for the construction of Clover Court and any stormwater needs prior to the signing of the final plat. Your planning commission did recommend approval. With the final approval of the stormwater plan, the approval of the developer's agreement, and all other ordinances, regulations, and reviewing agencies. Thank you.
All right, who's got questions for the good zoning administrator on this item? Observations, questions, thoughts?
Or just a motion?
If there is no discussion or questions on this, I certainly would accept a motion.
I would like to make a motion to approve the final plat of Golden Acres with the the following conditions. Final approval of a stormwater plan, approval and signing of a developer's agreement, meet the requirements of all other applicable ordinances, regulations, and reviewing agencies.
Thank you. Trustee Romas has offered a motion to approve the final plat of the Golden Acres with the conditions A, B, and C as stated. Is there a second to the good trustee's motion?
I'll second.
Trustee McKeefery has offered a second to trustee Romas' motion. Any other further questions or discussion on this item? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? That motion carries 7-0. Thank you. All right, item 8B this evening, the often talked about and visited once again comprehensive plan process and possible action on proposal. Zoning Administrator Dunks.
Thank you. Suamico and Brown County will be entering into a contract for the development of the 2026 Comprehensive Plan Update. Before that contract is finalized, we need to establish the process which we would move forward and follow. The first part would be how to create the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee. We got a couple of options. Does the Planning Commission take the lead in this process, or do we form a separate comprehensive plan subcommittee, which will then present to planning and zoning and ultimately to the village board? If planning and zoning does take the lead, we would still have members from the other committees and commissions participate when a chapter under review is related to their committee or commission. Their input is valuable. They will always be welcome for any chapter to attend if they have an opinion on something that needs to be in it. Some parts may actually be sent to their full body for review to attempt to create the best possible document we can moving forward. Citizens will also be welcome to attend and give input regardless of whether it's a committee's commission doing the work or a separate committee formed for this process. It seems to make sense to have the people already participating in the process to review and recommend changes and updates to the plan. They should have some idea on what works and what doesn't work in the current plan. They have an understanding how it may work together with other aspects of the plan. Again, if planning and zoning takes the lead, we would possibly keep that process as part of our regular monthly meetings, and that was their recommendation. Staff would look at regular agenda items and then just give an estimated time for when that comp plan would start. That way Brown County staff wouldn't be sitting around and us paying them for an hour and a half, or, you know, our people with items on the agenda wouldn't have to sit and wait for the comp plan to get hashed out for an hour and a half or 2 hours before their item was to come up, so we'd keep their items first. The proposal from Brown County is also included for possible approval. That current proposal is based on planning and zoning taking the lead on this. If a creation of a separate comprehensive plan committee is desired, that proposal would need modification before its approval. Your planning commission did recommend to take the lead on this with a 7-0 vote. Thank you.
Okay. So does everybody remember how I mean, it's been a long time since we've done this.
I think I was on a committee for it.
Were you not on the board? I thought you might have
I
been
was on the
in
board,
15.
yeah.
It was 15?
I was on the board, but I think we formed a different committee.
We did the last of, in 2005 and in 2015. We
I was on it and Pat was on it too.
Yeah, you might be right.
I guess I would lean toward, I don't know how much interest there is, but I would lean toward going out to the public.
Well, the public's included in either one of these.
Yeah.
The difference is creating a new committee, and then having that new committee start the work on the comprehensive plan, and then take their direction to the planning and zoning, and then planning and zoning looks at it, and then planning and zoning moves it out to whatever specific committee. The thought process, I think, that Steve had, I don't mean to speak for you, Steve, but the thought process was, we can still bring the public in, and we still have committee members in, but we try to make it a regular agenda item on the planning and zoning meeting every month to discuss comprehensive plan. And then those items, let's say it's park and rec, let's say it's public works, then whatever those items are, they go to that specific committee. We're trying to, I think the idea, and again, I don't mean to speak for you, but if my understanding was right from planning and zoning, the idea is, how do we simplify the process, still involve the public, still involve all the necessary committee members without creating a brand-new, unaccountable commission or new
Well,
committee?
The idea was, in the past, we formed that committee. We've had a member of each of our committees and commissions, or most of them. I don't think we even had a cemetery one back then, but I don't know that they'd have any input on that. But basically, one member from each committee, commission was volunteered to be part of that subcommittee. I think we had 2 village board members, and then we had a couple of planning commission members, along with 2 or 3 citizen members. And we sat and hashed stuff out, for hours on end. And the thought is, we're still gonna have the individuals from each committee, commission. We would request that member to attend the meeting that's going to be reviewing any chapter that would affect them. So we might have Park and Rec and Public Works at the same meeting, because that chapter might include both parts. Again, they're still welcome to attend. They're just not required to. And some of it, yeah, we would probably send it to each committee for their review, and then their liaison would take it back to planning to more or less enforce their views on what they would expect out of that. But again, citizen participation, it's not gonna be limited to 3 or 4 residents. Any resident here on a given chapter can come and speak their piece and not have to be involved in, 12 to 15 meetings through the process of all of this.
That's the thing that appeals to me the most, is a wider audience, right? Trying to get more of the public involved and not just have it up to 3 very interested individuals, but try to get as much of the public involved. But I'm one voice. I mean, I support the majority of the board, whatever the decision is.
And we do have 2 board members that are members of the planning commission already. And again, every board member would be welcome to attend. Our agendas already list that there may be a majority of village board members at a specific meeting for information gathering and whatnot. So they can all attend any chapter they're interested in, or all of them. It doesn't, it's not going to affect the process. We just feel that the Planning and Zoning Commission and our committees and commissions that are going to be part of that process are more familiar with what we expect out of that comp plan, how we implement that comp plan, and it's not, we don't have to re-educate or start, from the scratch with the citizen participants within that.
I just don't want the citizens to come and they're just told how it's going to be.
Your Planning and Zoning Commission does not operate that way. If they want to speak at that meeting, they're going to be allowed to speak at that meeting. If they carry on too long, that might be a little different, but I can't tell you when anybody at planning and zoning has been cut off when a citizen comes to that mic to speak.
They shouldn't be cut off when they come to speak at any committee, really, because it's really, isn't that public hearing format?
Well, and that's what they're still going to be able to give their opinion. We're not going to tell them how it's going to be.
Okay.
Their opinion is taken, and it's always been looked at. I don't see planning and zoning acting that way.
Yeah, I hope not, but it's still a valid, I mean, it's a valid concern, right? Everybody has that concern. Are there other concerns?
I think we have to kind of back up and ask ourselves, there's so many people that are going to be involved in this. I want to know who's accountable. Who's held accountable for the comprehensive plan? So we have to get to a point, and then there's a bunch of people that are responsible for input. So yes, citizens are going to be part of being responsible to give their thoughts and ideas. But what we can't have is a bunch of people responsible for thoughts and ideas, but nobody accountable. So somewhere along the line, we have to identify who the body, whether it be one person or 100 people, is not going to work at being accountable. So I think what the conversations at the planning and zoning was really about, planning and zoning is going to be held accountable to deliver a plan to this board. And it's going to have the input of all the different subject matter experts, including our village. And those are people that are going to be responsible. But eventually, we're going to inform and communicate to people what the plan is. The challenge we're going to have is people will come to that mic and they'll give you their opinion. What we're looking for is thoughts and ideas. We'll listen to opinions, but we got to get thoughts and ideas so we can assemble them to a plan that we can all get behind. So I'm looking for who's going to be the accountable party. I think that's what Steve is really referring to from the Planning Commission, is them taking the lead and being held accountable to deliver the plan to this group.
Okay, by all means.
Well, I agree with that. In the past, we have formed these committees to do this kind of stuff, and just like Steve Dunk said, that if we were to just create a committee again, you're starting from ground zero and going up, and I don't think we need to do that. We're on a pretty good page right now. We're making some progress. They're making progress, planning and zoning. And most of us seem to be agreeing with what they're doing. So I can't speak for everybody, but it appears we are in favor of what they're doing. So I think, and the public is still going to be allowed to speak and come, and that's what we want. If, we're going to make it, if they read the minutes, or, we're going to try and get the word out the best we can. I mean, to make them aware of what's going on.
They'll be allowed to speak, but it won't be really, I mean, I don't think they're going to change what they're going to do. And it just seems like they're listening to realtors more than people that live here.
So I think I see Trustee Eckert's point. I like the idea of having planning and zoning taking point on this, because I think there's a lot of work and a lot of understanding that will carry through then, that it's been happening. But if we don't open it up to actually having members of the public on the committee, then when it comes to the rubber hitting the road and the actual votes, then it's going to go based on how the committee, how planning and zoning feels. I think that's kind of your point, I think. And so I think that committee, it does need, and I would have, 10 minutes ago, I was like, yeah, just let planning and zoning do it. But the more I think about it, there's.
It's easier that way. It is.
It needs to be broad, and, but that doesn't stop planning and zoning from taking point, right? That doesn't stop the entire planning and zoning committee from being part of this. you would just have select members of the public or other committees that would be on that committee as voting members. So you wouldn't lose the momentum or the knowledge. That's what I'm thinking. I think I do see your point on that. Because if a person does come up, you can listen to them, but that person doesn't have a vote.
How big in the past has this committee been? And the last time, how many members?
I don't remember.
I think it was 17.
And how many of those roughly were people that weren't employees of the village or board members? So citizens
Or committee members?
or committeemen,
of
yeah.
committees.
So if we,
3 or 4?
so in the past, we've had a sampling of 3 to 5 people. How did you pick those people?
They just came, we don't have them climbing out of the woodwork to be on our committees and commissions today, so
Is it the normal application process, like we would?
I believe it was.
I believe I sat on that back in 15.
Yeah,
also.
but you were probably a trustee also.
I was at that time, yeah. And there was probably a handful, maybe 5 people that were not on committees at the time.
I think the goal is to
Go to the first page.
stop
All
a
the way up.
restart.
Is that
Right, I
all you
think
got is
that
that
was the
map?
goal of what I heard from planning and zoning, is that you don't want to do all of this and then start with a whole new set of thoughts, opinions, not even really knowing what direction to go. So kind of throwing a group of people to the wolves in a way. Planning and zoning wants to shepherd this from I guess, accountability standpoint.
Next
Now, where it actually goes to, where it ends, is where it ends. But I think we should at least open the door to have sampling of citizens who are willing to be on the committee, join the committee. And if we don't have any citizens who are willing to be on the committee, then those slots don't get filled. I think we solve the problem that way.
How many people are on the planning and zoning today?
7 members.
7,
Seven.
yeah.
How many are, and just 2 are board members, correct?
Correct.
Yes, we're actually looking for, we actually are looking for a replacement. One of the longer-term planning and zoning commissioners resigned his position and moved away. I think we've had an application out there we've had a request out there for applications for committees in general for 3 weeks, maybe a month.
Oh, not quite that long.
I think it's 3 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. We haven't got any response yet. None.
In practically speaking, I think there is also an issue of just continuing on, like having it part of the planning and zoning committee meeting. But you could just close that and then restart like another meeting, right? Like a subcommittee.
Yeah, I think we had 23 members last time. 6 of them, I believe, were not employees or already on a committee or commission.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody is suggesting that's not a good idea. I would be very supportive of bringing the right people into, but will they volunteer or do we reach out?
The right people, I mean,
You had
They have
eight-
to be knowledgeable, Michelle,
Productive and
on
helpful.
planning.
Is
Yeah.
what he's
Yes,
talking about.
there you
Yeah.
go. Productive and helpful, instead of just
Not me.
your opinion. of, like,
No, you're still welcome.
He has to say that.
And I do remember too, of all the people that were up there, not everybody came to every meeting
That's
either.
the problem.
You know,
Yeah.
there was some that just,
That's the problem.
they
But you
came
saw
to
the
1 or
quorum.
2 and, you know,
You
they
saw
didn't
the
even,
quorum, though.
they didn't come to all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the challenge, right? So if we're really going to have a comprehensive plan that's the voice of many experts, including our village members, the participation has to be high. So they can't just come for my day of opinions. That's not helpful. And so I wasn't here for how those members participated, but I would encourage us to use individuals that are excited about the future here and want to be part of providing thoughts and ideas.
And I think with planning and zoning taking point, that problem may also be mitigated. Because I can imagine if I walked into a committee meeting and there was a group of 17 people and it was just chaos, I might not come to the next one.
Yeah.
You know, planning and zoning, running it, keeping order, keeping it to the, or whoever, keeping it to the topic at hand, you feel like you're actually making ground and being productive, as they have been, right? So,
So Michelle, well,
Sorry, go ahead.
sorry.
You can go.
No, go ahead.
Oh, me. So Michelle's concern, if I'm understanding, is that we need to make sure that we have enough citizens from the village participating, actively participating in this preparation of this new plan. And then obviously the concerns we've got with open seats already with committees and the struggle to find people to commit to those. I think it's a push-pull from both ends. What if we were to still make the effort to put out a call to have people from the village show up to the planning and zoning committees as they're going through that, but they would not be added to the committee unless they would be willing to attend each meeting and be an active, participant in the meeting, take on those responsibilities and not just to show up on any given day to just share their opinions. That seems reasonable. Whether or not it would be successful, I don't know that. But the other aspect too could be to open it up further to, I know there's lots of activity on Facebook with our videos for the board to put something out on Facebook to help, like, as to Mark's comments, not just opinions, but actually thoughts and ideas, to open it up to, put something out there on Facebook or other social media to encourage people to send those thoughts and ideas in. Would that be something that would
Yeah,
also help?
thank you. I mean, it just, I just don't want by the right people, meaning you're getting people that just agree with you.
Right.
Absolutely, they have to attend the meetings. And they have to be serious about it, absolutely. And I think to go out and at least try to reach out to these people is doing our due diligence. It's not, I don't know, if it's an unrealistic plan, it's not real valuable because the things in it won't happen.
Administrator.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to provide a little bit more context because I think the majority of the board has not gone through a master plan update or comprehensive plan update. So statutorily, your local planning and zoning commission is responsible for approving the comprehensive plan. So you talk about accountability, the state statute tells you who is accountable. That's going to be your planning and zoning commission. And I'll just give some context from my personal experience. So I've only gone through one myself in the previous community. We had a subcommittee that ran it, but what happened there was, and I'm not saying this will happen here, but you had a subcommittee that was, for whatever reason, comprised of a group that had certain ideas on how the community should move forward, and they sent a plan, or their final proposed plan, to the Planning and Zoning Commission, who had a completely opposite idea on where the community should go. And so you don't want to give a false expectation to this committee that they actually have power, because ultimately the Planning and Zoning Commission is going to be the body that approves it and then sends it to the village board. And the village board has to approve what the Planning and Zoning Commission approved. That's just how statutorily that process works. So I'm not trying to sway you in any way. I'm just telling you that that's the process. That's something that could happen with a subcommittee. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but that's my experience.
and it's kind of the same process that we deal with when a committee, for instance, planning and zoning brings something forward to us. We know that planning and zoning has approved it. We understand that they've debated it and thought it through, but we could overturn it.
All planning and zoning does in this regard and every regard is offer this board a recommendation of approval or denial. And then this board makes the final decision on everything. Planning and zoning has no authority. They're the filter that comes here. So if you deny something that comes from planning and zoning, ultimately it gets returned back to planning and zoning. You know, so,
And
The process would be the
we
same.
have done that, you know,
yes.
it's been a long time, but we have done that, and it was probably more around this time frame that we're talking about, 2015, you know. And there's been a big change. I mean, it's 10 years ago. And I remember the kind of stuff we were discussing back then, and I'm sure you can too, Michelle. The larger lots and all the big stuff that's what the people wanted at the time. And there's change. That just, you can see it happening across the counties. And so we need to make some adjustments. We're not talking about making little lots all in the rural areas, you know, but in 10 years, there's change, and you learn, you know?
Well, I think the solution to the problem that Administrator Kaker was speaking of is resolved by planning and zoning taking point. And I don't want to overturn that concept, because I think that's a very important thing. All I'm saying is that I see the purpose of having a broader committee that would be underneath planning and zoning that could get more input from other people in the village. That's it. So if it was, say, a subcommittee look, it's still planning and zoning taking point, it's still planning and zoning period. They have a couple, maybe 3 to 5 more members on the committee, and those members then have a voice and a vote. And it would be up to that group then, that larger group, to bring something to planning and zoning, which should remove the problem of that conflict that Administrator Kaker was just speaking of, because they've all kind of talked it through. You still may, you know, there still may be no votes. Okay, that happens here too. It is, that's how I feel. I think there should be some path in that direction. And I don't know that it changes anything in this. The article that you provided, what does that change in this? It says planning and zoning take the lead, planning and zoning take the lead, and that's what we're talking about, is them taking the lead, and all I'm saying, excuse me, is that add 3 to 5 members of the public who will go through the application process and can start joining the meetings as voting members. I don't know if that changes anything. If it does, let me know.
So if I'm summarizing what you're, if I tried to summarize what you're saying to, really to go more along the lines of item
A,
planning and zoning. That's the update committee. I thought you were going more towards item B, which is to set up members of the village board, each committee, commission, and village resident, the old process.
I'm saying make planning and zoning commission A.
Yeah, okay.
With a subcommittee, so you would adjourn and then start your subcommittee, or however procedurally it would go. That's when the additional people would come in from the application process.
Okay.
You would go through that process as part of planning and zoning, and then you would adjourn that and then adjourn planning and zoning.
Okay, so let me see if I understand, if I can
Sure.
recite what you said. So planning and zoning taking the point, but as an item on the planning and zoning list, we would put out applications for representatives to come in during the planning and zoning meeting and participate in the comprehensive plan discussion.
But allow them the power to vote. So it has to be a subcommittee.
Oh, yeah, a subcommittee. So you would have a subcommittee meeting of the comprehensive plan within the planning and zoning meeting on
Right.
a weekly basis. And then there would be decisions on issues based on vote. And then where would those decisions go?
Those would be pushed up to the main committee.
Up to the main planning and zoning committee?
Yep, and then ultimately to this board.
Or would it be pushed to the main departmental committee? Meaning, so let's just say that the subject of the evening was Park and Rec. And you had your 3 citizen representatives here
As part of the subcommittee.
as part of the subcommittee, broke the planning and zoning meeting up. You went into the subcommittee mode. You had discussion on planning, on Park and Rec. There were recommendations indicated by vote, including the 3 members of the Citizen Committee and the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then those decisions, would they go to Park and Rec, or would they go back to Planning and Zoning, or where would those go?
So the way I see it, Park and Rec is an input to that committee. And we could also, could spread it out to doing B.
So
where
they would be
Park
there as a Park and Rec, on Park and Rec night, would be there as a representative.
Right, but they wouldn't be as a voting. They would be there to provide input. Now, that would be under A with a subcommittee. B is you'd have the setup members of village board, each committee, that one I think is too broad. I think that's what gets us into the problem that's been brought up here. So, I mean, you could make the committee with individual member, like the chair of each committee too. But I'm thinking just the subcommittee is planning and zoning plus the citizens. That's the voting members of the subcommittee. Parks and Recs comes in
As a
and
subject matter
says,
expert.
yep, and says, hey, here's the deal. We really need this, really need this. There's debate in the subcommittee. And then when the subcommittee is done, they make a recommendation through motion up to the main committee, which is planning and zoning. Planning and zoning, who's now been part of that, can decide that, you know what, I appreciate what the subcommittee has done, but we disagree. Or planning and zoning may say, they brought up some very good points. So they can choose to either, approve or reject at that point, and then that becomes matter of record. And then when all that's done, when each of those things are done, those all come up to the village board, and then we would look at planning and zoning's recommendations the same way they would look at each individual subcommittee.
But if those 3 or 4 members can convince the 7 members of planning commission that it's a good idea, what difference does it make whether they're, because it's coming from them and going back to planning and zoning, so they've already, through their discussion, convinced them that it's a good idea. How is that different than them sitting during the planning? Because I think if you're giving 4 citizens the right to vote, I think you need to give each commission liaison or whatever also that they need to participate in the whole plan then, because I think your commission members are more valuable than a citizen member that's gonna come out from the cold and volunteer to do this. They've been through it. They know how your comp plan works. They know how your trail plan works. They know how your public works stuff is supposed to work. Those are your people with the greatest input to this, and we've got to show them that they're of
So that's-
value.
And that's exactly the point. So they're subject matter experts, right, to use your term, which is a good one. So say I'm a person from the community and I'm now sitting on this subcommittee. And I think we need to have X, Y, Z. I'm sitting in that committee and I'm hearing the testimony from the subject matter expert, and I realize that what I thought was true isn't true. And now I decide, you know what, we're better off going this other direction. Now, you're imagining, I think, as a person who's like, I'm not changing no matter what's being told to me. And that's not what I see as a good committee member. I see a good committee member as someone who takes information from the experts and then decides whether or not that information is in the best, is enough to sway them. So that's just one idea. I mean, we could go all the way to B. What I don't want to lose here, though, is the argument that was made, and I think is compelling, that we don't want to create this ad hoc committee that doesn't have any idea or any history with the decision to make or the process. They go and they do what they think is right, but they don't have any context or any information that's going to, advise them that they're going down a bad path. And then they bring this to the planning and zoning says, no, then the feeling of that committee then is that they completely wasted their time, right? So I don't want that at all. I want planning and zoning involved with it and leading it. But I also want to block the other issue where you have people come in and a person gives what they think is a good point. Planning and zoning talks about it and says, no, thank you, over and over and over and over again. But we want to avoid that too. We want fresh eyes on this so that those people can say, well, wait a minute. You know, I talk with my neighbors, they kind of agree, or maybe not, right? So that's my ambition with this. Keeping the leadership so we don't have chaos, but broadening the scope so that we have more input from the people that will be affected by this the most. And I'm going to stop talking now. I think I've made my point as well as I can.
That sounds good. I mean, how much time do we have? What if you reach out to the public does not come back? Then obviously, we don't do that.
Yeah, there's no interest.
Hey, Michelle, I don't think putting something out there, people aren't going to run and knock down the door. We're going to have to go out and find people. I think you're going to have to identify, whether it be this group or the planning and zoning, who are individuals in this community that we want their input. And we're not trying to be biased, but we have got examples of, we put things out on Facebook or you put it out on the website, people aren't coming to us.
But at least, and you can still reach out to them.
Oh, of course you can, of course you can.
But if you put it out there, you've done your due diligence
Right.
and you've left everybody be a part of it.
Right.
Then you're not surprising it
No.
on anyone.
I'm agreed.
Because we're representing, 13,000 people here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they should get their say.
Of course, of course. So what I'm hearing is that planning and zoning takes the lead on the process. And they're going to solicit, commit subcommittees to bring input to them, of which is going to be included as part of the decision-making of what the plan looks like.
So, I know I promised not to speak anymore, but what I'm saying so I'm saying that planning and zoning continues to be the committee, but as a subcommittee, they invite additional people, up to 5, to join in that subcommittee. So it's still the planning and zoning, it's still that committee, but now we're 5 more strong, so we have a little better cross-section of the community. And that subcommittee then debates these things and works things out with new perspectives, new ideas, maybe, maybe not. And then that brings it up to the planning and zoning.
Agreed. We're saying the same thing.
Okay.
Yep.
So are we going out and soliciting representatives for the subcommittee to be part of the entire process for all of the departments and all of the, what was it, 179 pages of the comprehensive plan? Is that what we're doing? It's the same individuals?
I would say so, yeah. That subcommittee operates as a subcommittee to planning and zoning for this purpose. Planning and zoning, all the members of planning and zoning are on the subcommittee. Just like planning and zoning kind of wants it anyway. But with addition of 5 more citizens that operate, and then that committee then pushes their results back up to planning and zoning for a decision on that topic that day. So
Yeah, I mean,
it's an idea. I mean,
I think it's a great idea.
I think in some ways we're almost saying the same thing, which is, so comprehensive plan is going to be a regular line item on the planning and zoning agenda. Each week, prior to planning and zoning, there's an announcement that's going to go out to the world that says, hey, folks, if you're interested in park and rec, planning and zoning is going to be reviewing park and rec decisions, for recommendations to the board with regard to the comprehensive plan. Come to Village Hall. So anybody who's out in the world who we can get that message to, who's interested in Park and Rec is gonna say, okay, it's Park and Rec night for planning and zoning. I'm gonna go there to give my input. Anybody who's not interested in Park and Rec, they're not gonna come. Is that a better way to get at the particular input we want in a varied level of input, rather than having 3 individuals who are gonna go try to seek out and hope that they're gonna be here? Because this comprehensive planning process, this isn't weeks, this is many, many months. So they need to come to every meeting to, I think some of you guys made that point, you know, we need folks not who are just gonna show up, and I'm sure you experienced that in 2015, but folks who are gonna be there continually, because you get a sense for how the whole thing rolls, right? How it all comes together as a piece. And I don't know if inviting the public for each individual meeting is a better way to get that, or maybe having the 3 people, and part of me, having 3 of the same people appeals to me, because you're getting people involved in village government who wouldn't ordinarily be. Maybe it sparks something, maybe they continue on.
I don't know why you couldn't do both.
It
Yeah,
can,
the
I mean,
ones on-
but it has to, we have to reach out, because it can't just be people we know.
So,
It has to be,
That sample size is really small, though. You know, when you think about it, 3 people are going to be representing the village versus, pick any number you want,
But there's 7.
versus opening the mic.
100.
Yeah,
Well, no, I'm not saying versus. You still have your open meeting section.
Okay,
But it'd
all
be under the subcommittee. Oh, not versus. Subcommittee would operate like any committee. You would have your agenda, you would have your public appearances, you'd have your presentation on Parks and Recs, and you'd have, so everything would happen the same. Basically, the difference would be, is it's not just the planning and zoning committee then that's dealing with it. It's additional, say, 3 more, 5 more, whatever people that are now voting members. That's it. Everything else would happen the way that, the way this is described. And, you know, you think about planning and zoning is 7 people, you add 3 people, you're adding almost 50% more thought. Right, so if you want a cross-section of the village to, you know, hear and work, and to your point, President Van Rosen, the reality is that, that may spark some interest. People may come to it and go, you know what, we actually got something really productive done, and feel good about what we achieved.
Well, I'll ask, is the only 2 that participated left here besides myself, Michelle and Steve, do you ever recall that committee ever opening up the floor for public comment on anything we were discussing? I don't even know if the public was ever there.
Well, I think the public was allowed to come,
They
but
were
I mean,
allowed to come, but nobody ever showed up, and I
Yeah.
don't know that we ever opened
I'm
the
not
floor.
sure, I don't remember. But I mean, all of us, the whole room, you know, and there were just people that weren't on committees too. There were people that had been on committees in the past and that were part of it, and
Yeah, there was just a couple that weren't on,
everybody,
sitting on a committee.
everybody got to speak. I mean, I don't know.
And we had the same issue with every committee meeting, right? It's very rare that public comes in to offer.
Well, and that's the other point, nobody ever comes into your village board meetings to offer
But
their
it doesn't
opinion.
mean we don't have it, right? We still have the opportunity.
why do you gotta hate that way?
We still have the opportunity. There's a reason for that, in case someone does want to address a grievance.
So does this committee that you're talking about, are they gonna start out by coming to the planning and zoning meetings? Because somehow they need to get up to speed
It's a
as to
subcommittee.
what's going on
It's a subcommittee.
initially.
It would be a subcommittee to planning and zoning. So say there were 3 people. So instead of 7, it's 10. And yeah, I mean, if I want to join a committee, right, any committee, I'm going to go to their meetings a couple times if I can, to kind of see how things work, you know, to say, you know, is this really, you know, something that makes sense, right? So, sure, I mean, they could, or they could just drop in as, you know, and become committee members based on the applications. And it could also, you know, you could also have a situation where you have seats unfilled. We could put a notification out there, we need 3 people or whatever to join the comprehensive plan subcommittee. and you may end up with nobody wanting to join it. I mean, that's also reality. So there's all sorts of possibilities. It's just really, the real question is do you have a comprehensive plan that allows for a member of the public to be a voting member or not? That's really the question.
A process, do you have a process in place for identifying, reconfiguring the comprehensive plan that allows enough public input? Right?
Well, input and vote, right? So I'm going to draw a distinction between input and action, right? The output, I guess. The input would be any public person, anyone from the public who speaks. It could be the subject matter experts. That goes in the subcommittee. Then you've got an output from the subcommittee, which would be a motion or direction to the planning and zoning, which then takes that as input to it, and then we'll have an output as to a recommendation to the board. So what, the only real debate here that I see is whether we open it up to members of, a set number of members of the community to join this group and have voting rights. That's the only real question.
And you would do that to mitigate any bias that the planning and zoning board has, because that's the only reason you do it. Because you believe that your planning and zoning people would listen to what the community wants. They would process that as a group. But the reason you would put these, let's call it 3 today or 4, is to make sure that the planning and zoning isn't too close to their own work and there's a bias.
I think that would be a benefit of it.
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
That's
No, no,
the
no.
reason we're doing it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the reason, but it's a benefit of it.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
I guess I'm a little concerned with, I'm worried it might get a little convoluted. I think that the intent is great, and we do want to involve the community. We want them to be more involved. Putting it out there does fulfill our due diligence, to put it out there and give everyone the opportunity to participate. Adding 3 or 4 voting members to the Planning and Zoning Committee, I don't think I don't think it's a bad idea. I think we would probably fall short with fulfilling that. But to do a subcommittee, that's where I think the convoluted comes into play. I liked the idea you brought up, President Van Rossum, about subject matter specificity, where if it's Park and Rec we're discussing, we put out that anybody who has comments or input on a Park and Rec, then they can join this meeting, and go so on and so forth. I think because I think there's people that are in the village that have a lot of things to add or have opinions and, to share, but they're probably not in every category, right? They're probably going to have something more, they're going to be more focused on something that speaks more directly to them. And so then we would be leveraging where their expertise in that, not as an actual expert, a subject matter expert, but just, their involvement in that, they would be focused on things that they would be most comfortable and confident speaking about. And to go maybe a bit further, what if we were to approach this, because it is such a high topic, and we're looking at changes, and there's evolution going on with the village, and lots of people have differing opinions on that. If we were to kind of approach this from a more of a, I don't know what this looks like, I'm just going to throw some ideas. If we had a page, for example, that was just specifically dedicated to the comprehensive plan. It's very transparent. Last week, we met with the planning and zoning. We discussed these things. These are the things that we've decided upon. These are the things we're focusing on the next. It could be on our website. It could be on Facebook, wherever, we're most confident putting that out there. But that would just expand the transparency. And then, of course, within that period, we would just be like what Sky was just describing, was that we would be putting out there, like, this month we're going to be discussing this, that month we're going to be discussing this. And that way, people could put their thoughts together, maybe speak with their neighbors and whatnot, and then we're gonna go to the July meeting, or whatever that may be, but it gives them the opportunity to plan and prepare versus just getting, people in here that have opinions on the overall changes that we would be making. I'm just worried about, or adding a subcommittee, and it's like they would be voting, then that would go to P and Z, and then P and Z would push it to the board. It just seems like it might get a little complicated. But I would, if the overall opinion is that we want to add more to this, to the board, I'm certain to open it up, but to the point that I'm hearing we've got positions available and we're not filling them, I wouldn't want to just do it for the sake of doing it without any expectation of being successful.
And great idea. Regardless of the direction the board goes with the subcommittee or no subcommittee, we would probably do something like having a separate webpage that is dedicated to it, very similar to, as I was scrolling through here, for the fire station project, like we have for the water tower project. That's something that we're going to do regardless of the direction the board
Okay,
goes in.
perfect, yeah.
I have one question on the process. So the effect on the process, I was just putting together a rough process map on this whole, everything that trustee Rums was pointing out and being discussed from trustee Eckert, trustee McKeefery. Effect on the process. So one question I have, if we were to go with a subcommittee format, that subcommittee meets as part of the regular planning and zoning meeting, and then they have a series of recommendations based on vote. Those recommendations wouldn't be on the agenda for that evening's meeting, so that would have to be pushed to the next month, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, the logistics was hurting my brain a little bit, but yeah, in theory, you're going to have your planning and zoning commission meeting, your standard planning and zoning commission meeting. And then the original thought was to have it as part of the planning and zoning commission agenda, the discussion on the comprehensive plan. But if you have a subcommittee and you want them to have voting rights, you almost need to adjourn the planning and zoning commission meeting, then bring to order a new agenda, the comprehensive plan committee. They'll go through their agenda, they'll have a recommendation, they'll approve it or whatever. And then you'd almost have to reconvene as the planning and zoning commission to take a final action, because like we talked about, ultimately, the planning and zoning commission is responsible for making the recommendations. Can you adjourn a planning and zoning commission meeting and then later in the day?
You wouldn't adjourn it, you'd have to
But
go to recess or whatever they call it.
Maybe you do a recess.
But you could also just adjourn it.
You could
could adjourn, but then
regular
you can't
meeting
come
of
back
Planning
to
and
it.
zoning, and then open the subcommittee. Let the subcommittee go through its process, and then that adjourns, and then the minutes from that go to the following planning and zoning meeting.
Right.
Whatever planned meeting.
Can the subcommittee agenda be vague? It doesn't have to be.
Well, it's gonna be, Brown County's gonna have it specific to which chapters they wanna review that evening. And we were hoping as planning and zoning to have a lot of that legwork done before we start meeting with Brown County. We'd like our other committees, Park and Rec for the trails, Public Works for transportation, to get some of that review in ahead of time. So if they need to take 2 or 3 meetings to do it, we have the time to do it thoroughly and do it correctly. And then bring it back later so that we were organized, number one, to save money with Brown County. Because they're on the clock for, I don't even know what the fee was per hour, but, $180, $200 an hour to get the two members that they're gonna be sending. And it's our way to get our other committees and commissions involved more deeply in this comprehensive plan. Because if that group decides they want to send something back to that committee for another opinion, we could be dragging this thing out for 2 years, and we don't have the ability to do that. We're already a year behind in our process because of Brown County, so.
How would the group send it back the way you just described? How would that happen? Because the subcommittee reports to the committee. How would the subcommittee send something back to Brown County that would create a problem?
They wouldn't send it back to Brown County. What I'm saying is if they want a better opinion on what to do with the trails or the transportation,
They being.
It's
Brown
not
County.
going to planning and zoning. That's what we have our public works and our park and rec for.
Let me just make sure I'm clear. When you use the term "they," did you mean Brown County or planning and zoning, or the subcommittee?
The subcommittee.
Okay, so if the subcommittee wants more clarity, then that's what planning and zoning, or excuse me, that's what park and rec is there for the subject matter expert, right?
Well, but we would like Park and Rec to review that chapter before it ever goes on the planning and zoning.
What would stop them from doing that by having a subcommittee?
Well, how deep do you want us to get into preparing the comprehensive plan if you want a subcommittee to do it all?
The subcommittee is really your committee, just with more input, or more action, more voting members. I'm struggling with seeing the difference. The difference that I see is that you have members of the public that would be voting. Mr. Caker, you brought up, in the whole, and President Van Ross, in the process, you would have a week lag between one meeting and the other, and then.
We have a month lag.
It's a month.
A month lag.
So, are we talking weekly meetings or monthly meetings?
Planning and zoning meets once a month.
Because I heard weekly earlier.
Planning and zoning meets the
Okay.
second Monday of every month.
So the weekly was just a misspoke, okay, or misspeak. So, I think we need to have, more broad or actionable people on this committee, but, I understand what you're saying. I understand there's a problem then that's created.
I mean, if we
with
create
the process
Yeah.
itself.
We got the web page out
So you-
there.
You only get a 1 month lag, right, the very first month. So if you adjourn and open up the committee, it's the same as planning and zoning meeting. It's just that this now goes into the first part of the next planning and zoning, then that meeting happens, and then you close that one, then the same day you have the subcommittee, they do their thing, and then that goes to the next. So it's only one meeting out of phase.
Well, one thing I point out, and this was actually brought to the attention by Deputy Clerk Bergen in the last planning and zoning, she does not remember a planning and zoning meeting that goes under 2 hours.
That was an exaggeration.
That wasn't a little bit of an exaggeration, but here's my point on that. I do remember planning and zoning meetings that have gone till 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oof.
This is crazy. And more importantly than that, think about this logistically. So day one, or meeting one, month one, planning and zoning has a subcommittee meet. The subcommittee makes decisions. Those decisions have to come back now the following month for planning and zoning to review as a line item, in addition to all of the other planning and zoning responsibilities they have. And then we have to break into a subcommittee for additional discussion. Now, the next month, we have to do that again, and hopefully we don't have any residual left from the month before. I can conceive of a planning and zoning meeting getting very, very, very long, potentially. I understand what everyone's trying to do, which is let's get public input, and I agree, we need to get public input. I think what we're not necessarily in agreement with, we all agree we want public input, but how do we get that public input in here? One methodology that I heard is, let's get something out there and say, hey, Village of Suamico, we're gonna put together a planning and zoning subcommittee to discuss the comprehensive plan. We're looking for interested citizens. Honestly, to me, if we would put that out there with very specific, not an application, looking for interested citizens, and if we got a list, that would be the signal that maybe we're going the right way. Maybe there's people who want to be part of that subcommittee, and even though it's going to be painful and long, maybe that's just the way we have to go. On the other hand, if we put that out there and we're not getting anybody biting on that or showing any interest in it, and I think the requirements have to be very clear in that. This is a planning and zoning process. It's going to stretch for the next 8 months. There will be one meeting a month. We need your attendance at all of the meetings. If we don't get anybody who is interested in that, then we don't have anybody who's interested in it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and also say it could potentially last 2 or more hours,
At least, well, according to Deputy Clerk Bergen, they all last 2 hours at least. But anyway, is there anybody, so that's, I don't know, we need to make a decision unless there's other ideas and input. I mean, I'm 100% on board with, let's get folks involved in this, but we need folks who are as involved and committed to it as you guys were in 2015, going to every meeting.
And then the question still is, are we, those members, are they gonna have voting rights? Because if we have voting rights, it adds this complexity, right? Because we have to, what you just described about the next meeting, we have to publish it and.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, to me, if you're going to go to a subcommittee framework like we've been discussing, then they would need voting rights, because otherwise there's no reason to go to a subcommittee framework. Then you can have a public input framework, which was the other option, to say, planning and zoning agenda item, park and rec this evening with regard to the comprehensive plan. If interested, please come share your thoughts. But if you're going to have 3 members from the citizenry, 6 members from the citizenry who are represented on this commission and are diligently coming, and you have 7 members of planning and zoning, and I don't believe planning and zoning is biased, but you're going to have 7 members and 6 members. Are you,
Well, I don't think you're gonna, I think you're gonna put the whole plan together as that subcommittee. I don't think you're gonna go to every monthly planning commission meeting and review with the previous meeting. I think you're just gonna put the plan together then, and then planning and zoning would make the
review it
final-
as a whole?
Review it as a whole.
Oh,
I don't think you're gonna be,
okay. That makes more sense.
I do want to make clear, I do not think planning and zoning is biased.
No,
I just want to make that clear. I don't,
Well, my only point was, if there's concern over planning and zoning and any biases, unless you have 8 members from the committee with full voting rights, the same as planning and zoning, you're not going to eliminate that bias. In fact, you're probably going to be introducing another different bias, potentially.
for me, it's about the number of eyes.
Okay,
It's about
so
citizen participation.
Yep, same thing.
I guess what I'm hearing is we're gonna look for citizens to come forward, and we need to put a time frame on, how long do we keep this open? And what's the number of people that you want?
And we have to give them an understanding of what their commitment would look like.
Correct.
If you look at the project budget, there's a minimum of 7 meetings, which I think is probably light. But let's just say it's 7 meetings, so that would be at least a starting point to understand, and to think this is only a 2-hour conversation feels light also. So there's pretty significant volunteer time
Yeah?
that's required, as not only their knowledge but also their time.
It's an interesting point, you think about how much time it's going to take. At what point does that planning and zoning, if it just does go planning and zoning, at what point does that exhaust that committee?
Well, I'm,
Without,
yeah.
maybe that's a lot to ask of that committee. 7 meetings, you said at least?
Yeah, it's 7 meetings, 2 hours. That's what the
Yeah.
proposal was.
I could probably
well, that was the advantage of doing it the same night. It's not
Yeah.
another, at least it's not another night out of your
But
agenda.
that's adding 2 hours to your already maybe hour-long meeting.
Hopefully not.
Some topics are easier than others. I mean, you've got two individuals who were part of the last, go-round on this. They can attest to, some meetings are long, some meetings are not so long, right?
Makes sense. So 3 people, put a thing out there, looking for 3 people, need their applications in within 2 weeks, something like that. And if no one's interested, then we know that I'm
2 weeks
completely
is,
off my rocker.
I don't think you're going to get much in 2 weeks. I think you have to keep it open longer than that.
How much time do we have before we really need to get this thing underway? I mean, you
Well,
said
that
we're,
It's more about signing with Brown County than anything.
Yeah, so I would advise approving the contract only because the contract amount is the same regardless if you have a subcommittee or not. So it really doesn't impact the
Okay.
cost.
okay,
Because Brown County is looking for which communities are we doing a comp plan for in 2026.
got it.
And there are communities who have been told that, hey, you're gonna have to move back to 27, and if we drag our feet on it, we may lose our spot.
Okay,
But
So
that
I would at
contract-
least get that done. In terms of the structure or the makeup of a subcommittee, you've got until January of '26 really to get that figured out.
So let's throw it out there, 3 people, 1
You're-
month. 3 people, 1 month, out into the public, very specific, planning and zoning meeting, looking for attendance at 7 meetings, typically between, what do you guys want to put on for a time? 60 to 120 minutes?
Yeah,
Yep.
1 to
Well,
2
I know
hours.
it's a lot, but I want to be honest with
Oh,
you.
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think you're light.
You think I'm light?
Yeah, I think you're way light.
Yeah, especially in the early part of those.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, it
those
depends on
early
how much
meetings,
homework
they'll
we can
go
have done
longer.
beforehand, too.
And the planning and zoning is still involved, so you're not gonna have the chaos.
2 hours. 2 hours, Michelle was saying. All right, 7 2-hour meetings. And the time frame starting when? The months of? Just roughly?
January would be the start of the work with Brown County.
Okay, beginning in January of 2026 through July of 2027.
But
June of
no,
2027.
no, I think you wanted to back this up.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you wanted to be ready for them so that we're running with them when they start in January. So we've got to have these subcommittee sessions, right? This summer, or this fall, excuse me.
How much do we want, how much homework do we want done before
We want
we
as much
engage
as
with Brown
possible.
County?
Absolutely.
As much as possible because it costs us money.
No, we don't wanna lose that. Like,
September.
But a lot of that's gonna be planning and zoning, reviewing that comp plan and deciding what chapters go to which existing committees, commissions for their review and input on that prior to going to that, any.
Perfect opportunity then. If you have 3 people that are interested in this subject and they wanna understand how it works, they can come to the planning and zoning committee, listen to the discussion about that portion of it. And that way, when they're ready to roll in the subcommittee, they've got that information in hand.
So limited term appointment for, call it 8 meetings, 2 preliminary,
At least 8.
2 hours.
And hopefully one of them that will eventually sit on the board, because we're one
Yeah.
short.
It would be nice to get somebody on planning and zoning. Yes?
Yeah.
Starting point?
Yeah, well done.
Okay, let's see what happens. That's a good discussion.
But do we have,
1 month, right? 1 month, we're leaving that open? Do we need a motion on all of this?
I think you're trying to
Yeah.
approve this, right?
We just need a motion for the comprehensive plan
Yeah.
proposal?
No, we need a motion on the
Do both.
process that we just laid out.
Oh,
And are you interested in having us send out, say, a postcard to everybody in the community?
No.
If we just do a Facebook post, you're gonna get people saying, well, I would have been on the committee, but I didn't check Facebook, I'm not on Facebook.
We should publish it the same way we do,
What about the
Meetings,
newsletter?
right?
put it on
Well, no
the,
matter what you do, you're
Newsletter.
gonna have somebody complaining, so.
Yeah,
You're always gonna, I think we should do what we do with any meeting. Post it that way. That's my opinion.
We've tried mailings in the past, and they really
Yeah. don't-
weren't any more successful.
costs money.
It's just gonna be
You
an
know.
expensive way of getting no better results. Sorry
All right.
to interrupt you.
No, you didn't interrupt at all.
I interrupted.
You could, and I interrupted you, sorry about that. You could put it up on the window too,
Yeah,
you know.
you can get magnetic things we could put on our cars.
I already do that.
So we're gonna post this the same way we post the agenda?
That's just my opinion.
Is this what is there a, okay, we gotta put
However
this
you
into a
want.
motion and take a vote on it, right?
yeah, but how do we word that?
Talk about that.
And if I may add one more thing, not to
Please.
belabor this, but I would advise a even number, because in theory, by 2026, you should have a 7-person planning and zoning commission.
No, good.
And if you have, say, 3 people on this committee, now you've got 10 people on this voting board.
It's a very practical suggestion.
All right, so I'm gonna try to compose this into a motion. So I would offer a motion then that we put out a request to the community looking for members to join a planning and zoning, a comprehensive plan subcommittee meeting to take place on the nights of the planning and zoning meeting for a period of 8 meetings, 2 hours each, starting in September. And we put that out there for a period of 4 weeks, advertising or putting it out there in the same method that we currently use for agendas and meeting notes, which would be the website and et cetera, et cetera.
Would it become 12 now?
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you're starting in September,
No.
8 weeks isn't gonna
Just copy you can't just copy what I said.
make it.
Okay.
So 12? Okay, so just to change that motion slightly to make the 8-12, please. All right, so there was, did anybody capture that motion? Can you read it back? It just get
I heard
close.
Michelle typing, I'm hoping. That we put out a post to inquire, I missed a portion here.
That's okay. Just catch it in the video.
Put out a
Second.
post to inquire about
4 members.
4 members for the subcommittee,
To discuss the comprehensive plan.
comprehensive plan subcommittee, with a commitment of 12 meetings, 2 hours each, starting in September 2025.
6.
I'm sorry.
No,
Or
2025.
2025. And then advertise for 1 month to get the subcommittee members as part of a main committee. No. That's wrong.
You'll get it with the timing. You've got the majority of it. I think we know
I
where
do.
we're going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know.
Okay, and was there a second?
I
without-
seconded.
Do we want to put in they have voting rights? Will there not be in the average, but we're agreeing that those members are gonna have
I
voting
don't think
rights?
we need to add that. It's a
Because
subcommittee.
there'll be a subcommittee.
They're a member of a committee, they inherently have that.
All right.
Forming a subcommittee, they would have voting rights
Okay.
for any motion. Okay, was there a second to that?
I seconded it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Romas has seconded that lengthy motion.
It was a good motion.
I hope there's no further discussion or questions, but if there is, we'll take them now.
Like to call the vote?
Yes, please. Because this is a formation of a subcommittee, do we need to do this as a roll call because it's a structural change to the village? No?
Well, okay, if you want to follow Robert's Rules of Order, you just had a trustee who called the vote, which is really call a question.
Yep.
There needs to be a second to call the question, then there needs to be a roll call vote and 2/3 of you
I
voting.
didn't say call the
So
question.
you didn't, I didn't hear that right, okay.
I didn't say
Great, never
call.
happened. Never mind.
I said,
Okay, then we can just do
I
it.
just wanted to help him so you could know that we were in.
I'm still paying attention.
All right. All right.
It's easier to do.
A motion has been made, that motion has been seconded. We're all very familiar with that motion. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. All right, we have a second item
like to
here
make
that
a
we need to
motion?
discuss. Please do.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Brown County Comprehensive Plan proposal.
Trustee Romas has offered a motion to approve the Brown County